Hello and welcome to Screening Walks. I'm John Uriarte, curator of Screening Walks with Photographers Gallery. Together with Marco De Mutis, digital curator at Fotomuseum Winterthur, we created this series of fortnightly live stream events looking at visual network cultures. Screening Walks started more than 4 years ago, in April 2020, to continue with ongoing engagement of both institutions with the changing role of photography in the digital cultures. We invite artists, researchers, curators, and practitioners to take over our screens to share the ideas, the technologies, and work processes of their practices. The format of each event changes, and it can range from a practical tutorial, a peek behind the scenes, a participatory exploration, or a live performance, always encouraging our guests to experiment with what the live stream event format can offer. We have hosted more than 70 events so far. You can watch the recordings of all of them for free on our website, screenworks.com, and on our YouTube channel, browsing among them through the tags that we've used to group and curate them. Please remember that if you have found Screenworks useful for your professional or personal interest, you can subscribe to folders. For €7, you will support the program and its artists, and you can also get your personalized folder on folders.screenworks.com. There you will receive files and extra content from the artists and researchers of Screenworks. And finally, some housekeeping from my side. Your microphone should be muted to avoid noise disturbances. If it's still on, please mute it. And we are recording and we will be archiving this event. Please use the public chat to ask questions, or feel free also to send a private message to Marco or to me.
And hello from me. I am Marco De Mutis from Fotomuseum Winterthur in Switzerland. Today, we're going on a walk on the screen of artist Ellie Wyatt, who will generously share the process, the research, and the ideas behind their work, Cherrypicker. We will dive into the world of online poor images and the role that photography plays in the service of creating belief systems, from UFO conspiracy theories and apocalypse myths to political agendas and the cult of celebrity. Through the aesthetics of low-resolution pictures and blurry images, as well as the power of manipulation of digital photographs, the space for possible truth increases. The less we see, the more we see. It's through these cracks that beliefs are quickly created, and through the network properties that allow for global circulations on internet forums, this visual material can be easily spread. Often these images are also accompanied by graphic elements like red circles and arrows, which quite literally tell us where to look, shaping our gaze and influencing what we should and should not see. Ellie Wyatt will take us on a journey through her folders and across the eerie and uncomfortable worlds of Illuminati, ghosts, Google Street Views, alien civilizations, as well as Kate Middleton's needs, reflecting upon the ways images seduce us, exploiting traditional notions of evidence and truth in photography, while amplifying specific narratives through their digital and network properties. Ellie Wyatt is a visual artist, writer, lecturer, and educator based in London. Her research-led practice seeks to challenge how objectivity is represented, cultivated, and often fabricated within science and visual cultures. She works across printmaking, publication, installation, moving image and text, as well as participatory projects, including site explorations, talks, workshops, and seminars. Dear Ellie, thank you so much for accepting our invitation, and we look forward to finding the truth with you here tonight. The screen is yours.
Okay, thank you so much for inviting me, and that was a really great introduction. I was going to say I'm an artist and a writer and all that, so that's great. I don't have to do that. So just to sort of frame a bit where I'm coming from on this. So last year I published a book called Parallax, which, or the full title is Parallax, Conspiracy Theories, Details, and the Act of Looking Closely. And the book is about sort of multiple detailed modes of sight and how these kind of relate to conspiracy theories, the circle as a magical and scientific tool. And yeah, I'm just going to sort of expand a bit on some of that research today. So yeah, I'm coming from an interest in photography and belief systems, and a lot of what I'm going to talk about is conspiracy theories. So I just wanted to sort of frame what that means to me a little bit. So UNESCO defines conspiracy theories as the belief that events are being secretly manipulated by powerful forces with negative intent. So I think we're probably all really familiar with a lot of the more absurd conspiracy theories like flat Earth, hollow Earth, David Icke's reptoids, of course. But often they can be very much rooted in sort of very tangible, specific events. A recent example being Imani Khalif, who is a female athlete, and there was a lot of sort of conspiracy theories about her being trans during the recent Olympics. And then another example a bit more close to home, close to the UK. There was misinformation regarding an attack in Southport, and then this led to sort of targeted EDL rioting as well. So yeah, whether conspiracy theories are sort of fantastical or rooted in these very specific events, I think that to me they're often very symptomatic of real world issues and real world grievances. Like extreme inequality, sort of conflicts rising from ecological and geopolitical conflicts, and sort of really sort of exponential and asymmetrical technological advances. Obviously, conspiracy theories often play host to a lot of racism, sexism, transphobia, xenophobia, sort of all the phobias really. And I'm gonna talk more about, I guess, the aesthetic origins of a lot of these images. But I guess a question that I'm really interested in is, you know, are the aesthetics, can they and should they be sort of separated from the really regressive politics that a lot of conspiracy theories sort of center on? So I'm going to talk a lot about digital images and how they spread and the kinds of spaces that they exist in. But I'm also interested in conspiracy as a very topical phenomenon, but also something that is deeply rooted. So I'm going to also explore maybe how some of these aesthetic trends existed pre the internet, and then how these sort of translate into online spaces. So it's been a while since I did some stuff on Zoom, so I am going to share my screen. So please let me know if anyone is struggling to see what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm going to share this film that I made in 2021 called Cherrypicker. Marco just flagged to me before we started that I think the frame rate on Zoom is not super compatible with the frame rate of the film. So if you want to get the full experience, then please just have a look after. But I'm just going to play it. It's infinitely looping, but it is actually 4.5 minutes. So I'm just going to play it because it's kind of the basis for everything else I'm going to talk about today. And yeah, contains flashing images, so please take note. Okay, cool. So that is about the whole of the film. So yeah, as I said, I sort of came to this from an interest in photography. As Marco explained at the beginning, I'm really interested in technologies that kind of speak to truth in some way. And I'm interested in how photography is sort of aligned very closely with these ideas of objectivity, veracity, and documentary. And I sort of became especially interested in the crop and the detail and the zoom, and how these sort of additional technological processes of zooming in on images kind of again further speaks to that idea of veracity in some way. And so I was noticing the sort of red circle kind of popping up a lot, especially in relation to UFO imagery, sort of imagery of supposed alien civilizations. But it's abundant across a lot of other contexts as well. And, you know, actual scientific research, it's very present within that. So I'm just going to talk a little about the process of making the film. So to me, it seems that the use of found imagery is really important within conspiracy theory. And of course, then the selection of this found imagery becomes really important. I'm sort of interested in selection as a primary mode of content creation rather than a sort of a secondary act after the photo has been created. And selection is also something that I think sort of obfuscates the hand and agenda of the selector. And yeah, to me, the photograph is also always a selection. I think because it's the time has condensed so much, we tend to forget that a photograph is actually a sort of a package of time, which, you know, when it was first being developed as a technology might have been several minutes, and now it's down to sort of nanoseconds, but it's always a selection. So yeah, I just want to talk a bit about, I guess, my own selection processes. So I'm just going to share my screen again. Okay, so Google Images is, I think we probably all use it just to get photos. So I sort of started there, and I just wanted to show a bit about language and how the language kind of connects to what kinds of images turn up, I suppose. So if we just type in UFO, this is the kind of thing we get. We get some sort of, you know, more illustrative content. We do get some photographs as well. If we type in evidence, then we're moving much more into the photographic realm, and we see more of these circles and sort of graphic elements sort of popping up. Another phrase, if we type in real UFO, that changes it again. If we type in caught on camera, this is a phrase that I found often generated a lot of really interesting results. This idea of something sort of being there and just happens to get caught in the moment. Okay, so I wanted to also show how this language kind of exists within some of the imagery as well. Yeah, so you can see in these ones, we've got two angels caught on camera flying in Brazil. We've got real alien captured on video, alien caught on CCTV. It's all this kind of, this idea of something that just happens to be caught. Okay, so then I ended up, so I'll just show my kind of crazy way of managing all these images. So I ended up with over, like, I think over 1,400 images, and I had them all in one ginormous folder. And then I started sort of categorizing them. So I've got all these bizarre categories that really I never really intended to share with anyone. So we've got aerial, CGI aerial, green aerial, water aerial. We've got CCTV domestic, black and white, color, ISS UFOs. That's a big one, that. So loads and loads of supposed UFOs from the International Space Station. So yeah, I guess my process here actually ended up being incredibly sort of conspiratorial, in that I was sort of searching for materials and I was categorizing them, I was ordering them and sort of sorting them according to my own logic. And I guess I was sort of constructing meaning and linking things together in a way that, again, is sort of very aligned with conspiracy theory. And the way that I sort of pieced it all together was I had all these categories, and then I had it all written out on Post-it notes, and sort of had each folder arranged aesthetically so that the top image would link with the last image of the previous folder. So it was an incredibly, probably, you know, unnecessarily long-winded way of doing it. But it was lockdown and I had lots of time. So this is the way that I ended up doing it. And actually spending a lot of time with these images and really sort of thinking about them over a long period. Like I think it was a couple of months that I spent making the film. It was really interesting to be slow in the face of this kind of image overwhelm. I think we probably all experienced this in lockdown as well, but you know, all of our content was coming from online spaces like, you know, Instagram. I don't have Facebook, but Facebook for some people, I think. And even just, yeah, the way we interacted with our closest friends and family was completely through online. So it was an interesting film to be making in that moment. I'm just going to go back to Cherrypicker, actually. So another element of this was that I was collaborating, which was a really nice thing to be doing in lockdown. So I worked with a coder, a designer, and a sound designer as well. And I had this idea that I really wanted this kind of, this cursor that revealed something as it moved around the image. I think this idea of layering is, again, really present within conspiracy theory. There's a sort of obsession with what's below the surface level. Something that is sort of revealed by closer inspection is really important to it. Okay, so I'm just going to show some more of the images that went into this film. So I'm going to start by talking about the circle as a kind of motif. So yeah, Marco sort of touched on at the beginning this idea of sort of pointing or highlighting. So in a lot of these images, the circle sort of acts to point to something that it's very clear that this is what we're meant to be looking at anyway. There's kind of nothing else in the image to see. But I think this sort of shows that the circle has just become completely functionless. It's much more sort of acting as a sign or a symbol than something that actually has a purpose within the photograph. And I sort of chose to pull these ones out as well because we've also got this additional sort of layer of pointing going on here with the hand. So this sort of act of pointing twice within the photograph, I think, is really, I don't know, strange and interesting. So I kind of, I trace the use of the circle in this way back to the 17th century and the kind of development of microscopic and telescopic technologies. There was a real sort of sense that these new technologies would allow us to penetrate into sort of previously unseen worlds or to get closer to a sort of deeper truth. Robert Hooke, who was a British microscopist, had this quote where he says, "By the help of microscopes, there is nothing so small as to escape our inquiry," which I think is also a little conspiratorial, this idea of a sort of a quest or a search. But yeah, to me, this sort of, I guess, imbuing truth within the detail and especially within the sort of circular lens, that's sort of where that is rooted for me. And I also just wanted to show, oh no, we're not there yet. Sorry, I've got so many tabs open. Oh, here we go again, sorry. Yeah, so some of these more, you know, like legitimate, I suppose, uses of this diagrammatic annotation on images. We sort of see it a lot in scientific imagery still. And yeah, here obviously it's relating to the telescopic, so something that is being brought closer or being revealed somehow through this new technology. And I wanted to show this. So this is a series of images about the Boston Marathon bombing that were originally on InfoWars. So they've been taken down now, so I can't show them in that context, but there's an interesting article here about these images. So you can see that a very similar kind of diagrammatic approach has been used. We've got sort of very didactic labeling of the image as well. We've got the act of pointing. We've got the sort of reading of meaning into these sort of small symbols. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting parallel, and I think you can really see how a lot of conspiracy theorists kind of borrow this language of scientific diagramming and detail from these more legitimate sources. And I did just want to show InfoWars, and also I love that I have to verify I'm human here. It's like a sort of another layer of being let into a sort of secret club. Okay, so InfoWars, for anyone who doesn't know, it was set up by Alex Jones in, when was this? 1999, I have written here, so a long time ago. And Alex Jones has been platformed for a long time on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. He's been deplatformed now, but it took way too long for that to happen. And all the content is sort of alt-right, very conspiratorial. As you can see here, Alex Jones is making his money through these kind of crazy sort of nutrients and things like this. But I think InfoWars is a really good example of a site that kind of borrows from the, you know, a more legitimate news site format. We've got the sort of headings like science and tech, politics, economy, which, you know, we would see on any other kind of news site. But yeah, Alex Jones has been deplatformed for now, and actually he's in the process of being sued. So yeah, hopefully that won't be too much of a thing for much longer. Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna move on and talk a little bit more about detail. So the detail is something that is, yeah, really important, I think, within conspiracy theory. The image kind of acts as this almost sort of archaeological site that is sort of investigated. And I wanted to show this video with this slightly alarming looking man, which is about the Obama birther conspiracy. So for anyone who hasn't heard of that, that's the idea that Obama is not a US citizen and that his birth certificate has been faked. So here we go. We're going to watch a little bit of this.
Sorry, Ellie, I think the sound is not working.
Sorry. Can you not hear anything?
No, not really. At least I couldn't.
Hold on, that's really annoying. Let me just come back to where we all are for one sec. Okay, let me try just sharing sharing the individual tab, and we'll see if that is any better. Give me just one sec.
Same spot.
Is that any better?
Perfect.
Okay, great.
You can easily see that the type does not line up. No other birth certificate looks like this other than Obama's. Now, maybe the typist indented for some reason, but even if they did, the indent would be one full space. That's not what we see here. This is more like half a space different. That is impossible on a typewriter. This is only possible if the words were fraudulently placed using a computer, not a typewriter.
How old is this girl? This girl.
Okay, so we don't need to probably see any more of that or this. But yeah, I think this video is interesting because it sort of has this real honing in on the image. It's very sort of presented to be very sort of mathematical almost and sort of forensic. But there's a lot of very grandiose claims about like the width of a space on a typewriter that I don't really see how someone could sort of know that. So yeah, I think this kind of really zoomed in, looking in detail is used to sort of validate a lot of these sort of conspiracy theories. I'm just going to show a short clip from another video. Can you still see am I still sharing my screen, Marco?
Yes.
Great, so everyone's got this nice person doing some stretches. Okay.
We're looking at Ilana's method.
Yeah, great. Okay, here we go. So this is, I'm not going to play too much of this one.
Oh, but now we're not seeing the screen anymore.
Sorry?
Now we're not seeing the screen anymore?
Oh, sorry, everyone. Let me just share that.
And what you will see in about a minute is a hand. That, I believe, is some creature, non-human, crouching down. And that was its eye I just pointed at. And I want you to pay attention to what appear to be fingers running up the fence, as if it's kneeling down or something and peering out. And then there you go, see the fingers. And I think I go back and forth a couple times here, but it looks to me like there's a little other or a big creature looking through the fence.
Okay, so yeah, just another example of this kind of this mentality of kind of honing in on things that have always been there, or things that you previously missed, things that were sort of there all along, being this kind of really important clue. And I just wanted to, I guess, explore how this sort of goes back a bit further than the internet. So I'm gonna just share my whole screen, and I hope that that means everyone can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is the, if it works, come on. So this is the Arnolfini portrait by Jacob van Eyck, which I think is 1434. So, I mean, Van Eyck's very well renowned for this sort of insane sort of level of detail in the painting. And detail within painting, you know, is often used to kind of house these sort of secret messages or codes, which were sort of there for the viewer who is sort of clever enough to decode them. And sort of here we get the mirror reflected within the painting here. And this is very much a trope within painting as well. And I just wanted to show, and I think maybe the sound won't work, but I don't think that is a problem. So this has very much become a trope in film, in cinema as well. And one of my favorite sort of sequences is the zoom sequence in Blade Runner. For one thing, it has a mirror in it that is incredibly similar to the Arnolfini mirror. But it also, there are multiple reasons why it just sort of, it's, I guess, sort of fantastical or ridiculous, is that the sort of the perspective of the photographer or the viewer seems to sort of shift. Like we sort of move around corners, we sort of move into these sort of spaces in the back of the mirror. And also there seems to be a sort of infinite level of zoom as well. So there's the cool. So I don't think I need to show too much more of that, but I do need to have sound for the next one actually. So sorry, this is such a thing with sharing. I'm going to just stop this share and start a new one. Okay. I wanted to just show this really wonderful spoof from Red Dwarf of this kind of a clue, a sort of narrative clue being revealed in a detail.
Swallow and cast. Waiting for taxis. Fan Convention 2009.
Crichton, scan the photo and beam it onto that TV. Uncrop. Wait, what's that? Frame left? That card. Zoom in.
Swallow, pick up, 3 o'clock. Must be his taxi. Bet his address is on the other side.
Pull out. Stop. Wait. I've got an idea. Track in. Stop. Enhance reflection. Need another reflective surface to get back across the street. Zoom. Pan right. See if there are any water droplets on that lamppost. Got one. Thanks, Fido. Zoom 80. Enhance reflection. Stop. Rotate 170. Zoom 220.
What's that?
Flop.
That's the taxi driver. There's the business card.
Zoom 260. Rotate 90 degrees.
Track in. Swallow's business address.
Sir, wouldn't it have been quicker to look him up in the phone book? Print me a 4x6, and any more remarks like that, I'll ask for an A3 out of your waste disposal.
Okay, so I just love that little piss take from Red Dwarf, and I think it also has a lot of these phrases that you see in conspiracy theory images and videos, which is, you know, wait, what's that? Yeah, what's that? Like, zoom in a minute. Yeah, I just think it's a really great sort of example of that. So I'm going to move on to speak a little bit about hoaxes. I think photographic hoaxes are something that we think about a lot with conspiracy theory. So the word hoax comes from hocus, which means to deceive. And it's thought that that's rooted in hocus pocus, which is meaningless talk designed to conceal the truth. So I think the photographic hoax is really interesting in relation to concealing and revealing. And I think if we go back to the sort of the birth of photography in the 1840s, sort of since then, as photographic hoaxes have become more sophisticated, then photography's connection to truth and documentary has kind of in tandem been strengthened. So I think that there's a very interesting kind of paradox or symbiosis between how images are kind of co-opted in service of misinformation due to photography's very affinity with truth and documentary. I'm gonna, lots of screen sharing today. It is a screen walk after all. I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about fairies. If my computer will do what I need. Okay, so this is a very famous image. I'm sure lots of people have seen it. So this is the Cottingley fairies, which is a photographic hoax taken by Elsie and Frances, who were two cousins, and one of them, I can't remember which one, Elsie maybe, was very talented at illustration. And so we get these images which were, you know, really widely sort of questioned and believed and not believed at the time. But I wanted to sort of focus on them because I think there's a real high level of skill in the taking of these photographs, which I think, yeah, is really interesting. If we look at a lot of more recent sort of photographic hoaxes, I mean, there's not loads of skill going on here. It's, you know, very clearly fake. But I think maybe now the photographic hoax has come to mean something a little different. Rather than sort of concealing a truth, maybe the photographic hoax sort of acts to reveal something. And it doesn't really matter if we sort of look at it and know that it is a fake. It's sort of more about what it symbolizes, which is this sort of secondary layer of reality where, you know, there are things which are being hidden from us, things which are sort of outside of our daily experiences. Actually, I was looking at some of the old screen walks, and there's one by Sunny Atlas, which is on AI and conspiracy theories, and he used this really nice phrase of placeholder for evidence, which is sort of the way that I think a lot about photography in the context of conspiracy theories. Okay, so I wanted to also talk a little bit about double exposures and the ghost. So this is maybe a good example of, you know, the hoax being linked to mastery of photography as a medium. And I just thought it was really interesting how close this particular image was to one of the images in the film that I made. Where are we? Ghosts. Yeah, so we get this sort of ghostly figure sort of in in a veil or a long dress. And yeah, to me, this is very close to this one, but we lack the mastery. We can see that the ghost that's been superimposed is a higher DPI than the image in the background. And again, we've got this sort of red circle pointing to, you know, the thing which we're very obviously meant to be looking at anyway. But I think it's interesting that sort of in the Victorian era, which is very much an era of, you know, scientific and technological progress, there was a sort of a resurgence of interest in the supernatural. And I think photography very much sort of was part of that renewed interest and sort of displaying it. Okay, so I also wanted to just show this image, which is a stereogram. So if you unfocus your eyes slightly, I never know how quite to explain it, but you can sort of trick your eyes into making the image 3D. And I think it's interesting to think about photography in terms of when we want to be tricked. I think a lot of conspiracy theories sort of play on that, like, you know, when do we enjoy the trickery? When do we like engaging with it? When do we enjoy being sort of having our eyes fooled into believing something? And I also found it was interesting that stereograms have made a really big comeback on Instagram and TikTok, maybe in the last sort of year or so. I definitely feel like I'm seeing loads of these on my Instagram, and yeah, there's a lot of sort of language around, can you see what's in it? Can you unlock it? Can you sort of discover the secret message in this image? So again, very much kind of tying into this idea of there being sort of coded secret messages everywhere if you're just, you know, you are clever enough to sort of understand them. Okay, cool. I'm going to move on to the next thing. So I just want to talk a bit about icons. So icons in a religious sense were sort of meant or seen to be images that sort of make themselves, even though these are obviously painted by someone. They were sort of considered not to have the human hand. They were sort of made in a miraculous act. And I think that that's really interesting in relation to, oh yeah, so we have also pareidolia, I think is how we say it, which is this sort of tendency that humans have to see patterns where there aren't any patterns. So I mean, faces is a really key one here, and you see it a lot in conspiracy theory imaging as well, like faces on Mars, faces on the moon. Jesus in toast is one of my favorite ones. Lots and lots of Jesus in toast. But yeah, as Marco mentioned, we are going to venture onto the Daily Mail to have a look at Kate Middleton and her knees, which apparently look like Casper, the friendly ghost. And can I get it to just go to the actual, hold on, sorry, one sec. My computer is not loving the amount of tabs I have open. I'm just going to show it from here, I think. Do I have Kate here? No, I don't. But it sort of gets the point across. We have this idea of Casper the friendly ghost being present within Kate Middleton's knee, which I find just hilarious. But I also like that it's, again, a sort of supernatural being. But also, I think it's interesting because the Daily Mail, you know, has absolutely zero qualms about commenting and criticizing on women's bodies, especially. I read a really interesting essay a while ago by Cynthia Freeland on the idea that all photographs are icons in that they are images that make themselves. And yeah, I think that's an interesting thing to think about in relation to conspiracy as well. We can point to people like Alex Jones, Andrew Tate, as these sort of conspiracy entrepreneurs, if you will, but often they sort of seem to come into being almost by themselves. There's a sort of anonymous sort of group of people that sort of bring them into being. I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute. So I wanted to talk a bit about poor quality images. I'm sure that lots of people have probably read Hito Sale's In Defense of the Poor Image, which was published in 2009. And in her essay, she very much makes the case for poor images being sacrificing quality for accessibility. So the poor image is a sort of a more democratic way of sharing. And the digital is definitely, it's cheaper, it's smaller, it's more easy to search online. And yeah, I do actually have a couple of images to show with this one. So yeah, I think to me, something that maybe wasn't so apparent when Stale was writing back in 2009, and maybe it's to do with the sort of the abundance of phones everywhere now, is that I think the poor quality image does have its own kind of authenticity. I think that blur in itself is somehow an indication of censorship. It sort of implies something hidden or something secret. I think that motion blur can sort of imply spontaneity, like the idea that someone's just whipped out a phone and has taken a picture of something because they're right there, present in the moment. And I think also perhaps, you know, very high-res, slick images are often associated with expensive equipment. So that might be sort of state, professionals, experts, and we're very much in a sort of moment of anti-expertise. So I think that, yeah, there's definitely something around poor images having a new kind of currency in online spaces. Okay, so now we are actually going to go to 9/11 tourist guy. So this was a really famous image of I think he was Hungarian, a Hungarian tourist, Guzli, who sent this image that he created himself to just a few friends. So I'm assuming that was over email, or yeah, must have been email, I think. But this is a really good example of how something moves very quickly from the private sphere to the public sphere. Online, there isn't that kind of clear boundary between the two, and it's very easy for something that was shared. You know, he said it was as a sort of, you know, a very, very dark joke to friends, to then become actually something which is being questioned in the news, and he's being searched for. People are questioning whether it's fake or not. So blogs are another place where obviously a lot of conspiracy theories exist. Blogs are, you know, free for anyone to set up, free for anyone to put ideas out into the world. There's a lot of 9/11 conspiracy blogs. So this is just an example of one of them. I also wanted to talk a little about Pepe the Frog, who obviously not a photograph, but I think is a really good example of how things move around the internet, which is that Pepe was a cartoon frog made for a comic by cartoonist called Matt Fury. The comic was called Boys Club, and it was released in 2005. And I don't know exactly how this happened, but Pepe became very much a sort of white supremacist alt-right symbol on 4chan especially. And this is 4chan for anyone who's not been in it before. And I'm not going to actually go on the politically incorrect board because I think there's a lot of, you know, there's just a lot of like anti-Semitic, racist, just horrible shit on there. And I don't really think we need to look at it. But it's there if you want to explore it. But I did go on today, and I've been on the last few days to the politically incorrect board. And today, out of 31 of the images on that board on the first page, 3 of them were of Pepe. So Pepe is very present still. If you Google Pepe the Frog, loads of memes come up. Donald Trump actually retweeted this meme, you know, supposedly not knowing Pepe's kind of alt-right white supremacist associations. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of questionable. But we can sort of see how, you know, this thing created, you know, as a sort of cultural product then becomes claimed by alt-right conspiracists, spreads around on the chans, and then very much ends up back in the realm of social media with, you know, Twitter, Facebook. It's Pepe's on Instagram, on TikTok. So yeah, very present in all kinds of, I guess, what we'd call maybe more legitimate sort of online spaces. The Daily Mail is another one. I find the Daily Mail just so stressful to look at. There's just so much crap everywhere. The Daily Mail, I think, is interesting because they make great use of, what are these, like quotation marks? So they have so many quotation marks: crabs, lizards, bears, rabbits. And it's sort of, I guess it's used to kind of mask or sort of say, oh, apparently it's this, but you know, they're still posting and sharing these images, even if they're sort of covering their backs by sort of saying that it's, that they're just sort of quoting something else, basically. Reddit is also another place, obviously, where, you know, it's not very monitored, and there's, yeah, see, look, selling illegal Pepe. Pepe just comes up everywhere. Facebook is another one of these places. I mean, Facebook and YouTube, you know, they are very much content agnostic spaces where the kinds of images that get the most likes or the most shares are promoted regardless of the kind of content. And I think this is still an issue, even though, you know, Zuckerberg claims to be putting different measures in, but yeah, it's very much still a problem. And then I just wanted to show a few more of these like slightly rogue sort of blog/news websites. Firstly, you can see that, you know, all the money, all the revenue is coming from advertising. But yeah, we've got this sort of strange site where it says headline news, but it just, I don't know, there's no logo or anything. So this seems like quite a budget one to me. This one, we've got, you know, we've got a bit of a logo, a header at the top. We've got latest news. Yeah, so loads of UFO stuff on this one as well. And yeah, the Queen just in the middle there. Okay, this site's one of my favorites because, I mean, it's just aesthetically, there is just so much going on. I really like the header. I think the font is, yeah, quite trendy artistically, to be honest. The truth is within our grasp. So again, this idea of, you know, things being, we just need to reach out and sort of grasp it and understand, see a bit further than we currently see. I also like that it has all of these different news networks. And yeah, we get a lot again of, yeah, this sort of annotation of the imagery and lots of red circles appearing on this site as well. And then, yeah, with YouTube is, I'd say, probably the main place that a lot of these images come from. A lot of them are, you can see on the right here, it's sort of the header image of the YouTube, or the thumbnail, I suppose. But yeah, there's a lot of these kind of compilations, and as with Facebook, as with Instagram, as with TikTok, you are constantly recommended things that are similar to what you've already looked at. So I think the word wormhole, it's maybe a bit overused, but I do think it's sort of, yeah, it does accurately sort of represent what you end up within. So over the last few days, as I've been prepping for this, I've been Googling and going on Instagram and looking for, you know, UFOs and things like that. And just the speed with which my algorithm has changed has been really mind-blowing. Like, I used to just get lots of stupid videos of people doing stupid things, and now I just get conspiracy theories. Like, that is all of my content. Okay, so I feel like I've been talking for a long time. I'm going to stop the share. And I guess just to kind of wrap up that part of it, I'd say that I do believe in the value of photographs as objects that can speak truth or can speak to truth. But I think that photographs have never been objective, ever. The very act of taking one is subjective. It depends on context and intent, the technology which is being used to take the photograph. And I think that this widespread but very common misunderstanding, even now when we have so many AI images and we are very aware that photographs can be manipulated and manufactured, we do still very much have this sort of idea of the photograph as truth, which means it can very easily be co-opted in the service of misinformation. Yeah, okay, that's everything that I was going to talk about. And I thought that rather than just doing like a sort of very, I guess a sort of back and forth Q&A, I've got about 216 images that are just in a folder on my desktop. And I just thought maybe people could just say some numbers at random, and then we could maybe use some of these images as a sort of starting point to have some conversations. Yeah, it might work, it might not, that's fine. But maybe we could sort of engage in some conspiratorial thinking and pattern recognition, constructing meaning together. Yeah, thank you everyone for listening to that, and yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much, Ellie. So should we just write numbers in the chat?
Yeah, please just go for it. Between 1 and 216.
All right.
42,
so,
meaning of life. Thank you, Edwin. That is a good one to start with. So I'm just going to grab the images up and then I'll share my screen again. 42 is a nice one. Yeah, great. What else have we got? I don't have 333 or 420. 76 I can do. It's up to 216. I don't know why that number, but hey, that's what we've got.
I'm sure there's a reason why.
Yeah, there will be. What other numbers did we get? We got 99 and 22. Great. I'm going to just get those 4 up, and maybe that's a nice starting point.
Someone also asked for the first one, for number 1, and also number 100.
Okay, I'm going to start with these 4, and then we'll move on to 1 and 100. We'll see if there's any sort of great pattern there in between those two. I'm just aware that I want to be able to see people if people have stuff to say. Sorry, everyone, this is my first time trying this kind of format, so we'll see how we go. Cool. I think that I can hear people. It'd be really nice to actually hear from people, but these are our random 4 images. So it doesn't really have to be about this, but if anyone has any, thoughts or comments or anything, I thought this might be a nicer framework than just a Q&A. So I don't know, Marco, do you want to sort of...
I just wanted to say that people are, of course, free to write in the chat, or let us know. We can unmute you if you want to ask your question or bring comments with your mic on.
Okay, so everyone is muted automatically, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So maybe chat's better then. Hold on, sorry, I'm navigating, trying to get the chat up at the same time as trying to share my screen.
We can read you the question from the chat, so you don't have to go back and forth. Chad is asking, is picture 76 on the moon?
Yeah, supposedly, yeah. And also, I don't know what this is meant to be here. I don't know if it's meant to be a face. I also find it interesting that it says Lovelace. I don't know what that is, if it's a reference to this specific place on the moon or whether it's the user, but it makes me think of Ada Lovelace, who was like one of the, most important people in early computing. So I don't know, there's patterns to be made there, I think.
More credibility, you think?
Well, what, sorry?
You think it adds credibility?
Yeah, maybe.
I like the dotted line. I think that makes me think that it's more credible because it's a bit more sophisticated than the regular red circle,
Yeah, it's interesting. The dotted line also, it makes me think of like a perforation or a cut, or like when you see on on shows when plastic surgeons are sort of marking someone up, that's the line they draw as a dotted line on the body, like the place that it's meant to be cut. Maybe we will look at some others, but it'd be nice to.
One is asking, thanks, Ali, for a great talk. Any thoughts on subliminal imagery in film? I was struck by Hilary Mantel saying how she could see them, and also ghosts. Can some people generally see more than others?
That's a really good question. I was listening to a great podcast, actually, not so much about subliminal imaging, but subliminal sound. And I can't remember what it's called, but this idea that, you know, there are lyrics embedded in music if you play it backwards. And it was really interesting. Again, I think it's sort of like this placeholder for evidence. I think that on the whole, I think subliminal imaging has been shown not to be as effective as, you know, as a lot of people make it out to be. And again, it can sort of be a placeholder for whatever kind of, whatever agenda you adhere to, you know. So I think the podcast I was listening to was talking about, oh my gosh, what band was it? I can't remember what band it was, but it was like a quite famous metal band, and they got taken to court for the idea that their lyrics had inspired someone to do something, and they had to sort of go through in minute detail and sort of prove that what was claimed to be them saying "do it, do it, do it" was actually just like a random guitar noise or something. So I think again, it's very much this thing of if
so
it's
the MP is saying it was probably Judas Priest.
Yeah, it might have been. Yeah. Yeah, but I don't know. I think the idea of can some people actually see more than others is a really interesting question. I know that with color, that's definitely the case. But I don't know. I don't know how we see in terms of a frame rate, I suppose. But yeah, it's a really good question. Thank you, Fiona. See also Ritz crackers. Can you tell us more about that? Hold on, I'm just going to get some other images up while we do this. Yeah, I think it was Judas Priest, and yeah, it was a suicide pact. Okay, I'm just going to get some different images up for us to sort of respond to. But also, if anyone has any other questions, I mean, we might as well make it
I was also thinking of this idea of hallucination that has like this word, the hallucination word that has been used so much on AI recently, on AI generated images, when they start like creating images that are not supposed to be created, when you receive like an image that you don't expect after writing a prompt, and how people like things on them as like if the machine is dreaming or like it's having a nightmare or something like that. No, like how there's some sort of like a relationship between the machine trying to fill the gaps and and the human also trying to see things on those machine gaps. I don't know if you've seen like examples of like glitches or very clear glitches becoming ghosts or conspiracy theories, or this relationship between the glitch and the conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I mean, I had a really interesting chat with some researchers called Claire Birchall and Peter Knight a while ago about, you know, how the internet has changed conspiracy theories and what direction we might be going in. And I think Peter said that, well, we're going to sort of get to the point where the internet is just conspiracy theories because, you know, we're creating these sort of neural networks and AI systems that will just, you know, fabricate entire theories. They will make the images and they will put things out into the world. But yeah, I think that it's always, I'm definitely not an expert in AI, and I would really recommend Sunny Atlas's talk because that's much more grounded in research, I think. But I do think it's important to always place AI in the context of us. Like AI is another one of these technologies that I think people often sort of speak about as if it is separate from the people who have, you know, scraped the data, made the data sets, and sort of, you know, constructed the algorithms. So I think there's a lot of mystery around AI, but it's important to kind of place the human bias within that, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you.
there's something I really like. I'm always intrigued by the low resolution of it, right? Like how this kind of truths are created because there is also lack of visual information. Do you see like there's like specific aesthetics also in how, like, especially like I really enjoy what you said about the poor image, right? In 2009, 2008, there was this idea of like this power of circulation online as something that had like a yeah, as you said, like democratic and political agency, right? It was very seen as something positive. Fast forward to now, like this idea of poorness and low resolution, you know, had this ability to create all of these conspiracy theories. How do you see it evolving? Like, I think on one side we have this fight, you know, you mentioned AI now, but in general there is this like obsession almost with resolution and quality in images, in digital images. On the other side, like this proliferation of, I feel this lower and lower resolution as well, no? Like how do we deal with these two kind of trajectories? Or
It's a really difficult but really good question. I mean, I think there is definitely a place for, you know, there's an importance of low resolution images. I mean, like, you know, just look at the really horrific images that are coming out of Gaza at the moment. Like, we wouldn't have those images if not for people having phones, being able to share them on the internet at low quality and disseminate them around the world. So yeah, there's a place for that. And I think that there is something interesting in the obsession with resolution in tandem with that as well. Like, it maybe speaks to, I don't know, sort of luxury somehow to me. Like, you can get computer monitors and TVs that apparently are higher resolution than the human eye. And I don't really know what that means, because I don't know, what is the resolution of the human eye? Maybe there is a figure on that. But yeah, I don't really know if I've answered that question, but I think it's context dependent, and I think it's a really interesting kind of flip-flop between, you know, believing in very sort of high-res specific images and then believing in sort of blur and low resolution as being more authentic, more sort of, I guess, almost more sort of ground level, like on the ground, things being captured in the moment. I think forensic architecture have a lot of really interesting research around this, you know, like especially the idea of many sort of low res or poor images constructing a better sort of wider narrative, if that makes sense.
Meanwhile, we got a few more comments and questions on the chat. I can read them. There's Elena Matias saying that I saw stars in the sky one sunny day when I pointed them to a young couple. Both of them could not see the stars in the sky. Jonathan Powell says, splendid contribution, thank you. Might you have been a bit unfair on the quotation marks? Perhaps they help with the attribution of truth?
Maybe that's a good question, or a good point as well. I guess maybe it's my dislike of the Daily Mail sort of biasing my own perspective, and I think it's important that everyone recognizes their own bias. So I will gladly admit to that. Yeah, I think, I don't know, somehow it's like, to me with the Daily Mail, I think it seems like they want to publish these images because they're popular, but they don't want to go as far as sort of claiming them one way or another. So I don't know. To me, the quotation marks are almost a little bit of a cop-out, perhaps. But yeah.
I see Jonathan Powell raised a hand. So do you want to?
Yeah, hold on. Let me just stop sharing. Where are we? Yeah.
I think, should we try to unmute? See if maybe. I think I'm gonna ask the.
Am I unmuted?
Yes. Now we can hear you, Jonathan.
Thank you. Just as a sort of a pre-digital event, when people disperse from Oxford Circus or wherever they are, we had a little game when we were students. We would disperse to the bar and then look about and say, oh, isn't that such and such a celebrity sitting at the bar, and then work out whether they were or whether they weren't. It's just a little sort of game, but it struck me as being rather similar to what we're looking at in terms of the reality and imagination. And imagination is what we're talking about, I think.
Yeah, no, that's a
I
lovely.
hope that makes sense, just in a real situation rather than digital.
Yeah, no, that's lovely, Jonathan. And I think definitely this idea of, I didn't really go into it so much, but, you know, the sort of the experiential side of being, you know, involved or engaging with conspiracy theory is that it is often it's, you know, you're part of a community and, you know, there is a kind of game-like quality to it. So I think, yeah, that definitely resonates. Thank you.
Let me see. Okay, thanks, MT, for adding the documentary about the Judas Priest trial. It's on the chat for everybody. Philip Speakman says, thanks, Ellie. Looking at how silly some of them are, Bolton Pub Ghost, do you get a sense how many of these are based in seriously held beliefs and how much are for fun and clicks, and maybe how one slide into another? And if I may add also, you also pointed to an economy of it, right? Like some of them seem to be also part of kind of website who rely on them to make money.
Yeah, totally. Like, I mean, it's, again, it's very sort of complex. I think exactly like you said, the sort of the boundary is the really interesting place, like where things sort of slip from. I think that a lot of the time things are put out there for, as you say, for the clicks, for the money that comes from the clicks. But I think that doesn't necessarily mean that is how the content is received. And I think there are definitely, you know, people who are, you know, genuinely sort of believing in these conspiracy theories. And then there are people like Alex Jones who have sort of made an entire career out of this. And I think he's very, very deep in the wormhole, but he's also become an expert at monetizing other people's fears. You know, a lot of his, the products he sells online are about doomsday, like prepping, like getting ready for the sort of coming apocalypse. And, you know, in this moment, you can't blame people for being genuinely frightened about that. But then it's when, you know, the coming apocalypse is attributed to a specific group of often already marginalized people, that then that becomes a real problem.
And following the Judas Priest story, MT says that the prosecution fell apart when it was discovered that the expert on quotation marks they had used to find the backwards messages had also found secret messages on boxes of Ritz crackers, $5 bills, chocolate biscuits, and other everyday items, which rather damaged his credibility. So some sort of like a sad ending to the story. And Chad says, do you remember when people complain about the size of a JPEG file attached to an email because of their internet speeds, I guess? I guess that's also related to like the circulation that you were talking about just recently. You know how that also is dependent on the infrastructure of the internet itself and on the physicality or the materiality of the images and how they allow certain conspiracy theories or others, no, depending on what kind of technologies you have available and the materiality of them.
Yeah. Sorry, I've can you repeat that last bit? I was just a little lost for one sec.
No worries. No, I was just saying that as Chad was mentioning that conspiracy theories used to circulate as JPEGs attached to emails, and how has changed that, and depending on the internet speed and how like the circulation also of those images has increased. That's, I guess, that example that you showed earlier on the Twin Towers. That's like,
yeah, I think that the context is wildly different as well. You know, the fact that you might receive something, a single image from an email, but, you know, now we are seeing it's all sort of smushed together and condensed. You know, on Instagram, if you're going through Reels, you might see a cat doing something dumb, followed by a conspiracy or followed by some celebrity talking about something. Like it's all very sort of flattened, and you get these real sort of jarring situations on social media as well, I think.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I think also this context collapse, right? Like how you see all these different images and coming at you through feeds and so on. There is this space, like I think what Jonathan was talking about in this idea of like a game and this space for imagination that can be very innocent and playful. And then very quickly you showed us how it can become also very dangerous and political and, you know, kind of shaping, yeah, like very, very real and very, very, yeah, very real situations. There's like something, I guess, that's also we've been discussing in the context of the upcoming show at Photo Museum next May in the Lure of the Image, right? That there is something deeply seductive about images in the end that, you know, can take us, yeah, to all of these different spaces in ways that other media don't do, right? Like we get seduced by these images, this kind of like, I want to believe, to stay in topic with the conspiracy theory and the UFOs. I think that there's something particularly powerful about images in this form of seduction. Or have you thought a little bit about that, specifically like why the photograph, right? I mean, you touched upon this tradition of truth or alleged objectivity.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that we deal in images so much now, like Instagram and TikTok, and yeah, I keep going back to social media, but it is very much an image space. So I think that is the currency that has sort of formulated around it. But I don't know, I was trying to sort of articulate this, and I don't know, maybe someone else has some thoughts, but I have, out of my many folders, I have a sort of selection of some which I find sort of beautiful in a way, like aesthetically they sort of do something. And I don't know, maybe it's a sort of a level of abstraction which is interesting. Maybe it's the sort of diagrammatic qualities. I don't know, I think images definitely, I find it hard to explain why, but I think photographs can do something aesthetically which videos don't do, which words don't do. Sorry, that's a bit of a wishy-washy answer, but
yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting you to solve the whole thing, but yeah, that is interesting that there is like a specificity about the photograph, right? Meanwhile, like MT added another question in the chat. The Cottingley fairies and spiritualism can be seen as a result of trauma of the First World War. Is there a sense that the current internet conspiracy is a response to the trauma of modernity? People searching for meaning?
100%. I think that's a really great question again. Yeah, so the Cottingley fairies was 1917, so yeah, slap bang, well, towards the end of the First World War, but you know, having lived through 3 years of it already. Yeah, so I think that's a really great question. I think people searching for meaning is, yeah, very much part of this. I think we also are still experiencing trauma from COVID, I expect, even though I don't know about everyone else, but it's like a weird blank patch in my mind where I barely ever think about it and it's like it never really happened. So that's definitely real. I think we can talk about, you know, the conflict in Palestine or, you know, genocide in Palestine. We can talk about loads of other things that are deeply traumatic happening in the world right now. And yeah, I think there is this sense of searching for meaning, searching for agency as well, whether that's individual or collective agency. And I think it kind of also goes in tandem with, you know, there's a sort of a rise in interest in sort of the occult, in sort of mysticism, you know, horoscopes even. And yeah, if anyone is sort of more interested in that, I really strongly recommend Doppelganger by Naomi Klein, where she very much sort of goes into these sort of connections between things like the wellness industry and then sort of conspiracy theories and, you know, how all these sort of things interconnect. It's a really fantastic book, so I recommend.
Thank you. And if you had to just maybe towards maybe like yeah, we could start thinking about wrapping up the event. Maybe one last question about if you had to choose the most symbolic conspiracy theory to represent this response of trauma of modernity. Is there something that comes to mind that you could, like in your research across all of these terrifying places you visit throughout COVID? Is there one imagery maybe, or like a conspiracy theory that you think it's more symbolic than others?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, and another hard one that I'm going to find hard to answer. I mean, when I had the first part of your question, I was going to say UFOs. UFOs are sort of the archetypal conspiracy theory. You know, they touch on so many different things like technology. Yeah, and that would be the most archetypal conspiracy. But in terms of the one that sort of speaks most to sort of trauma of today, that's also really difficult. I'm going to have to think on it for a minute. Maybe the sort of, I think this is also something with the internet, and this came out of that conversation I had with Peter and Claire again. I think I asked Peter, what is the biggest change that the internet has had? And it is this idea that before it was maybe sort of lots of small conspiracy theories, lots of smaller groups of people sort of pulling strings, but now we've got this idea that everything is connected. All these sort of smaller conspiracies speak to a larger conspiracy. So maybe even, you know, the flat Earth conspiracy theory, I think might be, I don't know, it feels very, even though it's been around for a long time, it feels very topical in that it's, you know, it's relating to the whole world. There's this idea that the conspiracy is so big that our entire planet is kind of contained within it. Yeah, I think maybe that sort of speaks to it the most off the top of my head.
Thanks. Yeah, and it feels like that's really, yeah, the internet conspiracy theory in a way, right? But on that note, maybe I also want to thank you once again for like your very generous sharing of all of your research. And again, I encourage everybody to go and check and view Cherrypicker online and look at the work in its habitat or in its best conditions.
Yeah.
And I thank everybody for joining us and for all the wonderful discussion. We're going to be back again in 2 weeks.
Thank you from my side too, Ellie, and thank you to everyone who are, I mean, there's people still sharing their own favorite conspiracy theories on the chat, so keep them going.
Great. We should start like a sort of anti-conspiracy blog or something. That would be lots of really amazing questions. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. It was, yeah, really, really, really great. Thank you.